What if most of the electrical problems that slowly drive you crazy weren't real failures at all, but leftover electronic noise that could be cleared in under a minute? No scan tool, no diagnostics, no money spent. It sounds unrealistic, yet this is exactly what experienced repair shops do before replacing a single module. Think about it. Random warning lights, locks acting on their own, strange shifts, climate controls with a mind of their own. And the verdict is always the same: it's electrical. But what if the system was never truly reset in the first place? April 14th, 2019. Phoenix, Arizona. The temperature outside is already climbing, and inside a small independent repair shop, a 6-year-old sedan sits quietly on a lift. On paper, there is nothing dramatic about it. No crash damage, no obvious mechanical failure, but the dashboard tells a different story. Warning lights are scattered across the instrument cluster. The transmission shifts late, then too early. The steering wheel feels heavy one moment and overly light the next. The owner says it feels like the car has a mind of its own. That sentence is more common than you think. And it is where most modern car horror stories begin. Because when a car starts acting unpredictable, the explanation almost always sounds expensive. Electrical issues, communication faults, control modules, software problems. Words that immediately suggest long diagnostic hours and parts that cost more than rent. The car still drives, but nothing feels right anymore. Every trip becomes stressful. Every new warning chime feels like a countdown. And slowly, drivers are conditioned to believe one thing: if the car is acting strange, something must be broken. But that assumption is where the real misunderstanding begins. Modern cars are not simple machines anymore. They are rolling networks. Dozens of control units constantly talking to each other. The engine control module, the transmission controller, the body control module, steering assist, climate systems, safety systems, all exchanging data every second. Voltage levels, sensor readings, learned behavior, driver habits. Everything is logged, adjusted, corrected, remembered. That word matters more than most people realize. Over time, a car does not just respond to what is happening right now. It responds to what it thinks usually happens: how you accelerate, how you brake, how often you sit in traffic, how hot the engine normally runs, how low the battery voltage dips during cold starts. These systems adapt constantly, and most of the time, that is a good thing. It makes the car smoother, more efficient, more personalized, until something interrupts the learning process. A weak battery one winter morning, a jump start done in a hurry, a repair where the ignition was cycled too many times, a voltage spike, a sensor that briefly sent nonsense data before correcting itself. None of these events are catastrophic. The car keeps driving. No parts fail dramatically. But the electronics do not forget them either. Small corrections stack on top of small corrections. Temporary workarounds become permanent habits. And eventually, the system is no longer adapting to reality. It is adapting to noise. That is when the strange behavior starts. Random warning lights that appear and disappear. Features that work perfectly one day and misbehave the next. Systems that technically function but never quite feel right. You take the car in, a scan tool is connected, fault codes appear, and suddenly the conversation turns toward replacement. A module, a sensor, a recalibration that costs more than expected. And sometimes, after all of that, the problem still comes back. Not because the repair was bad, but because the underlying state of the system was never truly cleared. This is the part that almost nobody explains clearly. Diagnostics are excellent at finding hard failures, broken circuits, dead sensors, components that no longer respond. What they do not always address well is corrupted behavior, electronic states that exist in memory, not in metal, a control unit that is technically healthy but logically confused. Reading data does not always reset data. and clearing a code does not always clear the conditions that caused it to exist in the first place. So drivers are left stuck between two worlds. The car is not broken enough to justify replacing half the vehicle, but it is not healthy enough to trust either. And that uncertainty is exhausting. Most people try the obvious fix. They disconnect the battery, wait a few seconds, and reconnect it. Sometimes it helps, sometimes nothing changes. When it doesn't work, the conclusion is immediate. People say that trick doesn't do anything, but the truth is more uncomfortable. The trick wasn't done wrong, it just wasn't finished. Because in modern vehicles, removing the battery cable does not mean everything shuts down. Not immediately, not completely. Control modules contain capacitors and backup power paths. Memory circuits are designed specifically not to lose data during brief power interruptions. That is intentional. It protects systems during normal use. But it also means that many so-called resets never actually reset anything meaningful. The car may lose clock settings, radio presets, or a window calibration, but the deeper electronic states remain intact. What you get instead is a half reset. Power is restored before silence ever truly happens. And a half reset can be worse than none at all, because it gives the illusion that something fundamental changed when it did not. This is where experienced technicians slow down. Before parts are ordered, before blame is assigned, before expensive decisions are made, they ask a different question. Not what failed, but what never stopped running. The answer to that question leads to a procedure that looks almost too simple to matter. No scan tool, no software update, no replacement parts, just time, order, and understanding how modern electrical systems actually behave when you force them to let go. Back in that Phoenix shop, no modules were replaced that day, no wiring was repaired, no sensors were swapped. The technician did not rush, he did not guess. He simply gave the car something it had not had in a very long time, a complete, uninterrupted shutdown. And that is where this story really begins. Once you understand that the problem is not always a broken part, but a system that never truly shut down, the entire approach changes. This is no longer about chasing faults, it is about control. And control in modern vehicles starts with rules. Before anything is touched, the car must be quiet, not just off, but asleep. The key is out of the ignition. Push-button systems have powered down completely. The lights are off, doors are closed, or at least not constantly being opened and closed. No screens waking up, no interior lights pulling power. This matters more than most people think, because every time a door opens, modules wake up. Every time a screen lights, communication resumes. You cannot reset a system that refuses to stop talking. This is the part people rush, and rushing is exactly why the reset fails. Once the car is truly asleep, the negative battery terminal is disconnected. Always the negative. Not as a ritual, not out of habit, but because it is connected to ground. Removing it breaks the circuit safely and prevents accidental shorting. At this moment, many people assume the job is done. Battery disconnected, problem solved. But inside the car, very little has actually changed yet. Control modules do not panic when power disappears. They coast. Modern vehicles are filled with capacitors, tiny energy reservoirs designed to keep circuits alive for a short time after power is removed. They smooth voltage fluctuations, they protect memory, and they do their job very well. Even with the battery disconnected, modules can remain partially powered for seconds or minutes, holding on to the very states you are trying to erase. This is why a simple disconnect often feels ineffective. The system never truly lets go. That is where the second move comes in, and from the outside it looks almost laughably simple. With the battery already disconnected, press the brake pedal, not once but several times. Each press requests electrical power that no longer exists. The result is that internal capacitors are forced to discharge. Stored energy has nowhere to go, it drains, and the system weakens. The noise fades. You do not see anything dramatic happen. No sparks, no lights, no confirmation chime. But inside the vehicle, the electrical network is finally being starved. Microcontrollers lose support voltage. Volatile memory stops being refreshed. Circuits that were lingering shut down one by one. This is not magic, it is physics. And it only works because the battery is already out of the equation. Now comes the most underestimated part of the entire process: waiting. 30 seconds does not sound like much, but in electronics, it is an eternity. Those quiet moments with the car untouched, no doors opened, no buttons pressed, are when the final traces of stored energy disappear. This is where the difference between a shallow reset and a deep reset is decided. Reconnect too early, and some modules never fully power down. Their state survives. Their confusion remains. This waiting period is where most people lose patience, and patience is the entire point. When the time has passed, reconnection begins, and order still matters. Place the negative terminal back onto the battery post cleanly and firmly. No hesitation, no testing for sparks. Make a solid, confident connection from the first touch. A loose or hesitant connection introduces micro-power interruptions that can confuse sensitive electronics before they even finish booting. Tightening the clamp properly is not optional. A surprising number of electrical issues come down to nothing more than poor battery connections. Now the system wakes up. And this is where many people panic because the car doesn't feel normal at first. The engine may idle slightly differently. The throttle response might feel unfamiliar. Automatic shifts may not match what you're used to. Steering assistance can feel subtly altered. Climate control defaults may not match your preferences. None of this means something went wrong. It means something finally went right. The engine control module is waking up without recent adaptations. It doesn't remember your old driving habits yet. It hasn't relearned idle corrections, fuel trims, or load responses. So it starts from baseline values and begins observing again. With gentle driving, smooth acceleration, and normal use, it rebuilds its tables. And when there were no real mechanical issues to begin with, many odd behaviors simply disappeared during this relearning phase. The transmission behaves similarly. Modern automatics are constantly learning how you drive. Aggressive throttle input, frequent stop-and-go traffic, and inconsistent driving styles all leave fingerprints in the adaptation maps. After a deep reset, those maps are cleared or softened. The transmission starts in a neutral, factory-like state. Shifts may feel early, late, firm, or soft at first. That is not a fault. That is the system waiting for new information. The worst thing you can do at this point is panic and drive erratically. Consistency teaches faster than aggression ever will. Electric power steering also benefits from this silence then restart process. Assistance levels, steering angle offsets, and compensation values are tied directly to the electrical network. After a reset, some vehicles recalibrate automatically while driving. Others require nothing more than turning the wheel gently from lock to lock and then driving straight. If the system was confused by low voltage events or transient errors, this process stabilizes it. If a real fault exists, the reset does not hide it. It exposes it. Climate control follows the same pattern. Behind the dashboard, motors, sensors, and logic routines reset to default positions. Air doors find their limits again. Fan logic stabilizes. Temperature readings are evaluated again. The system behaves conservatively at first, then settles as sensor data becomes consistent. What once felt unpredictable often returns to boring reliability. What makes this procedure powerful is not that it fixes everything. It is that it separates memory from reality. After a true reset, what remains is real. If a warning light returns, it means something physical is wrong. If a symptom disappears, it was never a broken part to begin with. And that clarity is the real value of these 2 minutes. Because when a car finally forgets the noise, it starts telling the truth again. The most revealing part of this entire process does not happen in the garage. It happens on the road a few minutes later, when the car settles into motion and you start paying attention to how it feels. Not how it felt yesterday, not how you remember it from years ago, but how it feels right now, with nothing to lean on except fresh data. At first, there is uncertainty. The idle might sound slightly different. The transmission may hesitate for a moment before choosing a gear. Steering assistance might feel lighter or heavier than you expect. This is the moment where most people assume they made a mistake. But in reality, this is the moment where the car is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Observe, measure, adapt. Modern vehicles are not static machines. They are systems that learn. Every mile driven, every throttle input, every braking event teaches the car something about the driver and its own condition. Over time, that learning becomes layered. Corrections stack on top of corrections. And when those layers are built on imperfect information, the behavior slowly drifts away from what feels normal. A deep reset removes those layers. What is left is not a tuned system. It's a neutral one. That neutrality is uncomfortable at first because it lacks personality. The car hasn't relearned you yet. It doesn't know how aggressively you accelerate, how often you coast, how you treat the brake pedal in traffic. It starts from a factory-like baseline and waits. This is why the first few drives after a reset matter. Smooth inputs, consistent behavior. No testing, no proving, no panic. The car is listening again. As miles accumulate, something subtle happens. Shifts become more predictable. Throttle response smooths out. Idle stabilizes. The vehicle begins to feel cohesive instead of conflicted. In many cases, symptoms that felt deeply mechanical simply fade away. Not because they were imagined, but because they were never physical to begin with. They were behaviors reinforced by old data. Fuel consumption often improves quietly. Not dramatically, not overnight, but measurably. The engine no longer compensates for problems that no longer exist. Cold starts feel cleaner. Hesitations disappear. Even cabin comfort becomes more consistent as climate systems stop fighting phantom inputs. This is the payoff no one advertises because it doesn't come in a box and it doesn't have a part number. And this is where the question inevitably comes up. If this works so well, why is not everyone doing it? The answer is not a conspiracy. It is economics and caution. Time spent resetting a system does not show up on an invoice the same way parts do. It does not guarantee a visible repair. And if a real fault exists, this process will not hide it. In fact, it will expose it more clearly than before. That means responsibility. It means understanding systems instead of replacing components. And not every shop or every technician wants to rely on something that requires patience and judgment instead of hardware. There is also risk when the procedure is misunderstood. Done carelessly, rushed, or without respecting order, it can create problems instead of solving them. That is why experienced technicians do not advertise it as a magic fix. They use it quietly, early in the diagnostic process, to clear the slate and see what truly remains. It is not flashy. It is foundational. What this reset really does is remove excuses. After it is done properly, the car can no longer blame old voltage events, corrupted adaptations, or temporary glitches. If a warning light comes back, it comes back honestly. If a system misbehaves again, it points toward a real component, not electronic residue. That clarity saves time, money, and frustration. And for many drivers, it changes the entire relationship with their vehicle. The car stops feeling haunted. The randomness disappears. Trust returns. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything finally makes sense. Back in that Phoenix shop, the sedan did not need a new transmission. It did not need a steering rack. It did not need a body control module. It needed silence. 2 uninterrupted minutes where nothing was allowed to run, remember, or correct itself. 2 minutes that forced every system to stop, reset, and start listening again. That is why this simple trick works. Not because it cheats the system, but because it respects how the system actually works. And if you have ever felt like your car was slowly slipping into chaos without a clear reason, this is where you start. Before replacing parts, before accepting expensive explanations, before assuming the worst, try the reset. Do it carefully, do it patiently, and then pay attention to what changes. If this helped you understand your car in a way no one ever explained before, subscribe for more real-world techniques professionals use but rarely talk about. Like the video so it reaches drivers who are stuck chasing problems that are not really there. Comment below with what changed after your reset, because sometimes the simplest fix is the one that gives you your car back.